So, it's a little dark, but what is the story with kind of, you know, losing your mom or your mom dying in childbirth and then how, the fallout with your dad?
Yeah. Well, my mom died after married at 19, died at 29, leaving 5 kids and one in her belly. So the old man was drinking, had no advocate. I can just imagine him ranting and raving. And they took the 5 kids away from him. And
So she died in the last childbirth.
yeah, she died of an infected appendix, and she was pregnant again with a sixth child, I was told.
Wow.
So of course, the poor man, his young wife has died. They took the 5 kids from him, and they threw him. He was already troubled, I think. Anyway, they threw him in a shithole called Bridgewater State Hospital / prison.
Jeez.
This is 1939. We never saw the man again until he came by to visit the Flynns in 1947, 48. He didn't see his kids for probably 10 years.
So how old were you guys then at this point?
At that point, well,
He hadn't seen any of you since you were born. So this is 10 years?
10 years.
He was in like kind of a sanitarium or some other
He was in a shithole they call Bridgewater State Hospital / prison. They closed it because of the criminally insane, I think they called it, the place.
So he just got lumped in.
God knows what they shot him full of,
Oh.
And so, 10 years later, suddenly we're at Flynn's in 1947, 48, and he was sitting there in the kitchen when I came home from the boys' club, having a drink with Mr. Flynn, who did, right away, honestly.
And hadn't seen you kids in 10 years.
He jumped out of the chair when I came through. Jesus Christ, my little towhead. I was blonde. My little towhead. Christ, bring Mary back. Shrieking, bring us Mary Ariat, my mother. That's when Mr. Flynn said, look, Joe, you're frightening the kids. Now that's enough. And he continued to rant and rave. And Mr. Flynn was not a man of patience. Good man, but no patience. Muscled him out the door, down the edge of the house, out onto the street. Come on, get going, Joe. And his shoe fell off. Just a broken down old back of the shoe, even like a slipper almost. And he went hobbling down the street with one shoe on and went back to wherever he lived in Boston. Of course, I grabbed the shoe. I didn't fault Mr. Flynn. Put it in the closet, drawer in the back door closet. We have an extension of the kitchen, we call it the back closet. Anyway, lost track of the shoe. Wish I'd held on to it.
Why do you think he just became so unglued? I mean, I get it, and it sounded like they were really in love, this couple, but why do you think he just...
I think he was troubled to begin with. I think he probably had maybe mental problems. Joe, what did Joe say? Joe once told me, well, he said he used to hear voices, our father. So he must have had, but she loved him and he was a good man.
Well, yeah, and he must have had, something going for him because he's wooing this, brilliantly musically talented woman, your mother.
Well, he was extremely handsome. Mrs. Flynn said, what a handsome man your father is. Well, we just saw him as a wild-eyed man,
right.
50 years old. Old for 50, a broken man.
Right.
But she said he was very handsome. So he must have just, my mother was working, she had done 1 year at Oberlin as a musicologist, a pianist. And she was 19, and he was 10 years older, working as a chauffeur for a wealthy family from Pennsylvania at the same resort where my mother was working, and he whisked her off her feet and she ran off with him. And the family, of course, so he was probably working tanneries in Danvers, Mass. That's where they went.
Right.
And that's where she had 5 children.
And it seems like everyone else we kind of know about, and he's kind of the X factor or the black sheep. you know, as far as ancestry.com,
Yeah.
etc.
Well, just think about it. She came from a family, rural Maine, Oxford, Maine, Norway, Maine, near the New Hampshire border. Their grandparents, and I've got pictures, no, her parents, my grandparents, on my mother's side, I don't know nothing about my father's. They worked woodlots, mills, apple orchards. And at the turn of the century, or shortly thereafter, they put Uncle George into Rensselaer, Aunt Amy through Bates, and my mother was a student at Oberlin. So they were quite disappointed, of course, when this guy swept her off her feet. Charming, handsome man.
Right.
And
but not of the same ilk
not
by a
of the
huge
same ilk.
margin.
Not educated,
Right.
and they resented him, of course. I can understand
Sure.
that. And I think kind of all through his life, I think Uncle George, you know, he kind of checked on us, but almost like when he died, he left a whole bunch of money to his prep school in Maine. He didn't leave a cent to us.
Right.
You know, they probably kind of always had some resentment that we were the product of Joe Collier,
Yep.
not of his beautiful sister.
Right.
It's quite a story.